Okay. Waiting to confirm. Well, that shouldn't be on that speaker. Nope, that one. Alright, YouTube should be up as well. Looks good. Looks good and sounds good. So we are live and on the air. Welcome everyone to the Foolish Tech Show. It is a bright and bushy Monday morning. Hope everyone is getting a good start to their week. And we are here mainly to provide support and answer any questions about our products and services. If you have any of those, you can feel free to jump over to our IRC chat. You have a couple of ways you can access it through foolishtechshow.com, and we'll be happy to talk directly with you. Otherwise, since Monday is normally our slower day, we've been taking a bit of time and focusing on a single topic. And today we're going to go over the Pi hole. And essentially what that is it's a DNS server, a local DNS server that takes any of the DNS requests, so any lookups from web address name like www.whatever, and gives you back a IP address of the server hosting that site. Essentially, it keeps a list of all of the ad style ones and just drops it off into infinity, so it just doesn't go anywhere. And that's extremely nice because that'll save you not only bandwidth but also hassle and possible malvertising with all the ransomware and Trojans and viruses we've seen come through advertisements that haven't been thoroughly vetted. And even nicer because it can work in conjunction with your ad blocker on your web browser, which I would not recommend AdBlock Plus anymore. We're all using, I think, MicroBlock now. uBlock is what you would search for.
Yeah, Origin. There's actually, though, two different microblocks. So I prefer the Origin one. Yeah, just be careful which one you go for with that. And also, too, a lot of other ones tend to glaze over the biggest step in the Pi-hole configuration, and that's what you're actually doing on the router or gateway's end to, or your DHCP server rather, end to make that work. Are you going to be able to show some screenshots of that, or is there too much sensitive information there for that to happen?
Well, I don't know if it will apply to everyone, so that's
It certainly won't, but maybe as an example, and I know that's why they do tend to gloss over it, is because it is a little bit different for each person. But there are some nuances of how that's done, particularly on the gateway devices, and I thought it's useful to spend some time doing that. But if maybe I can do it at the end, just do what you're going to do.
Yeah. So Rover has a question in our IRC chat before we jump into it here. Oddball question for us. Customer wants to set all computers to not allow surfing to any websites except specific ones. How would you implement that? And they're all Windows machines. Well, I would say you would probably want to have an internet gateway because that'll give you the most control and ability over that. And actually, you probably would end up wanting to set up a DNS server on that gateway so that it would only resolve the specific websites that you added.
Yeah, you could also do that with IDS rules and traffic shaping rules and things, or maybe not traffic shaping rules, but IDS rules to make something like that happen. It depends on the type of environment you're talking about, but pretty much that's the point where you want to put that protection in place there on that gateway device. Doing it any other way is gonna involve too much management unless it's just a very small number of computers.
Yeah. I probably would not do host files just because you're managing each computer specifically there. And does host files support wildcard where you block everything?
Don't recall. I don't think so.
You really
Yeah.
can't do that. You're talking about routing rules. It's not gonna be something a host file is gonna be sufficient.
But you would have to use the host file to block everything.
And see that is
It's like a
allowed.
firewall rule, you know.
So-
yeah. Well, see, that's what I was about to say. Is it's kind of a strange request because well, if they only have 2 or 3 computers, it wouldn't be that hard management. But the issue with it there is that none of the technology, DNS stuff, anything like that, is really set up to block everything going out and only allow certain things. Most filters and things like that are all going to block specific things.
You could do a routing rule
to
make it happen.
Well, not in a host file, but you're gonna do. You would have to do a like I would do Open DNS. Like I do actually, I could do that. I know I could do. And actually, I would do what Brantley's doing. But I know Open DNS I think has things where you can only allow. You can do wildcards and that. You might want to look into that. But you'd have to like do a policy to restrict changing the DNS per workstation.
I mean, you'll also know the IP addresses effectively of these machines that you want to access as well. So you could create other types of rules that just affect that, not the DNS system. But I think the DNS is the most straightforward and easy, and something like OpenDNS is a good, simple idea, especially for a business to block other traffic as well.
I think it would be as well doing the OpenDNS if they support the wildcards and you can block them that way. That probably
super easy with OpenDNS. It's just too easy. Yeah. If you want to get something up and running quick, that's probably the best.
What program have you found that will do it, Rover? I'd be interested to know that program.
Well, I don't like using programs, honestly.
See, the only just accessing certain sites, but everything is so linked together. I mean, accessing one site, like if I just opened up, a particular site and then blocked out all of its content, it's not terribly useful to access it. I'm also a little bit unsure as far as web browsing, unless it is a truly isolated website that doesn't go and only gets internal data. It's be careful. You may have to open up more than just that site.
Well, and also relying on like the DNS or host files or anything like that, you may have some savvy users that realize what DNS is doing and just type in the IP address and go directly to the site. Because all of those things are based on filtering DNS calls.
Yeah, well, that's why I said that there is another option, and you would know the IP addresses of the servers you wanted to reach, and there is something you can do for that too. But that is going to take write some destination firewall rules.
Yeah. That I mean, if you want to make sure that it doesn't get past, you'd probably be looking at setting up a internet gateway and setting up firewall rules so that they can only get to specific IP addresses. So you know the sites you want to go to, you know the IP addresses of those sites just by pinging them. And then you can set up firewall rules to block them from getting to anything else other than those IP addresses. Because the thing you'd have to remember, even like if you set up the host file or you set up DNS routing and blocking and things, if they know the IP address of Google, they can go to Google and then they can search and then they can go from there wherever they need to go, basically. Because they can just go caching and things like that. So, Good question, though. Very good question to start off the day, Rover.
I did say IDS. I don't know why. I just wanted to. Had IDS on the mind and choosing detection, but that's really not. It's not an intrusion thing. It's an external thing, so it's going to be a firewall rule. So please ignore what I was the mention of that
I was gonna
terminology.
question that, but
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah. My apologies, but ignore that part. But everything else is relevant.
All right. Well, let's look into the pie hole here.
It sounds like a dirty word.
I can't find the answer.
Anyway,
that was a joke, but yeah, it does kind of sound a little bit funny. But the idea is, and Brantley mentioned this, but a black hole. Think of that where the ads kind of get sucked down into.
Like a dirty word.
They also it's very interesting and you'll see this during the installation of it, but there is some terminology that they use which is very reminiscent of talking about a more, a black hole, an astronomical type thing.
yeah, because it's sucking all the ads into a black hole, basically. Cool. Yeah, take your time. We'll be have the chat up. So I'm gonna share my screen though. So Michael, if you're ready for that.
Scene 2, sure, go ahead.
There we are. So once you install Pi-hole on a Raspberry Pi, this is what you would end up getting. And essentially what this is kind of your dashboard to see how many ads are being blocked, and every day it resets this interface right now. So you can see just since midnight Eastern Standard Time, I've already had 10.5% of my traffic blocked from going anywhere because ads are everywhere apparently. Now on my network here, not a lot of traffic going through, not a lot of bandwidth is 10% of that. But if you're talking about major networks like 500,000 people, that could actually save you a ton of data and traffic. One of my other favorite things about it is you can't really get ad blockers on phones unless you have an Android that's rooted. You can't really get ad blockers on iPhones. They have some available, but it's not an ad blocker for the entire phone. It's like web browsing ad blockers. So to be able to block the ads that come inside of apps, this is the greatest thing for that. So all of our phones go through this as its DNS, and we don't have ads inside of our apps or anything like that when we're using them. So that's one of my favorite things there. But you can kind of see a traffic graph too of when traffic's coming through. You can see it has almost 100,000 domains that it blocks. And it's kind of interesting too to see how many DNS queries all your systems actually go through. Because of this, I was able to find out some interesting things about the clients on my network and where they were going, and found out my security cameras, the Guardzillas, are contacting that Chinese search site. What's it called? This looks like malware to me.
The Chinese search
like
site?
the Chinese Google.
Yeah, off the top of my head, it's early in the morning. Good Lord.
I can't remember it right. Bankai or something like that. Anyway, it was Baidu.
Baidu, yeah.
Yeah, so it was those. Apparently, what I'm assuming it uses it for is for internet connectivity checking. It just pings that website every couple of seconds to make sure it has connectivity. And since they sell all around the world, they wanted to pick a site that was accessible all around the world. And if you're behind the Great Wall of China, it's hard to know what sites are accessible outside of that. So they just picked that, and that it's just pinging that. But I was getting like thousands of requests per hour for that site through those. So I was able to find that out with this nice interface here, and it does give you some interesting stuff down with the top clients, top advertisers, top domains. I'm not going to scroll down though, just because I don't want to show off IP addresses and things like that. But you can see it's got a nice whitelisting section and a nice blacklisting section. So if you want to add things, very easy to blacklist specific sites, very easy to whitelist specific sites. And yeah, so it's pretty nice. Another nice thing about this is it does not have to be run on a Pi. Pretty much any Linux system you have, you can run this. So you could even set up a virtual machine on your computer and have that running, and then have your DHCP, be it from your router or internet gateway, pointing to this virtual machine, and it'll block your sites that way. And essentially what it does is it checks the DNS name, sees if it's on this block list, and if it's not, then it forwards it to a DNS server of your choosing. It gives you options for Google, OpenDNS, Norton, I think, and custom ones. But we'll see all that stuff in the setup here in a second. So I knew that this show was going to be an early in the morning, so you couldn't see a complete graph here. So I did take a screenshot of what a full day at our house looks like. Whoa, it's not supposed to scroll through like that.
No.
Let me bring that picture back up here. This mouse wheel is so sensitive. Where we go. There we go. So this is a full day's worth of DNS queries. You can see we got almost 20,000. And again, this is not taking into account my IoT devices like those security cameras, our TVs, the Amazon Echoes, things like that. I have all of those going straight out to the gateway for the DNS requests, because most of the time those are just pinging for internet connectivity, and it kind of skews what your results are here.
So is this consistent with what? Okay, so on mine I see anywhere from 10 to 20%, or not usually 20%, but 10 and above percent of the traffic is ads. That it seems to be consistent with what you're seeing on an average day. Is that the case? Okay, so that's just like for a fact, everyone will expect to get at least 10, if not, 15.
Depends on the site you're going to, I would imagine. I do know that,
but we obviously go to a lot of different sites. But you think that we tend to maybe go to less ad?
I know that top hitters are a lot of the Windows 10 privacy things are in there for ad blocking. The Amazon privacy things are in there for ad blocking. Your Android phones privacy things are in there.
So the more of those devices you have, the more likely. Okay.
The more you're more likely. And we have similar setups because we're running Windows 10, we're running Android phones. May or may not have Amazon stuff pinging through.
And I'm probably not going to. See, you go. The thing is this, though. The only reason I was asking this is I know you guys go to social sites there, and I don't go to social sites here. Yet I'm not seeing a huge difference in that type of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and a lot of the social sites, they don't really have ads. If they do have ads, then they're putting them in as posts or coming from different users. So you're not actually going to those domains or getting those things. You're getting it from the social site. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. But it's also pretty cool. You can see when your internet traffic is going through. So like you can see during the day, we have a lot more internet traffic than in the nighttime hours. Same thing for today. You can see not a lot of traffic, and then I got up around this time and got some more traffic, and it went back down. So
I don't know what you were doing at 5 a.m., but wow.
This is actually when I reloaded my internet gateway.
Oh, okay. well, that might make sense. Okay.
Because I went to pfSense because I have a problem with OpenPN Sense now. But that's a topic for a different day. So that's the Pi-hole stuff. We kind of given you an overview of it. So let's get into the making it. Before we jump into that, I'll go ahead and post some links here. This is a Raspberry Pi 3 kit. And basically for $50, you get everything you need for a Raspberry Pi 3. I would actually suggest getting that one instead of the Raspberry Pi 2 because it's actually cheaper to get the Raspberry Pi 3 kit than it is to get the Raspberry Pi 2 kit. And that's mainly because Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are built into this Raspberry Pi 3, so that's saving you cost. And it's pretty nice. This comes with pretty much everything you need. The only other thing you would need here really is a SD card, so a micro SD card to hold your operating system. And pretty nice kit there. The case is pretty nice. The power supply that they give you is the top rated power supply for Raspberry Pis and any kind of micro USB adapter. It's got heat sinks and of course the Raspberry Pi 3, so fairly nice kit. For an extra $10 you can get a micro SD card, and probably the most other thing you would want to have would be a HDMI cable, which those are kind of easy to come by. Maybe a USB keyboard and USB mouse, which those again are easy to come by. Now you can do this through Wi-Fi, but I would probably highly recommend using a LAN cable and Ethernet cord. So probably want to have this nearby your router so that you can have the most speed. Because I mean, you saw that we had 20,000 requests, and that was kind of on a off day, not a work day. I think during our work days we get up around 40,000 DNS requests. So definitely would be good to have it on a LAN cables just so you have that instant speed almost. Wi-Fi you could get by. Michael, what's your opinion? Would you think a DNS server on Wi-Fi would be?
I don't recommend it, but I have seen it function. The problem is you want the Pi-hole to be one of the first things that comes up on your network, and having it over the wireless, I think the time it's going to take to establish the wireless connection when the Pi boots up is probably not going to be the best idea, but there's nothing to break it fundamentally if you have a stable Wi-Fi connection. But I just don't as a best practice, you know.
Yeah, I would not recommend it either. I would recommend a cable just for that extra little bump you get there in speed. So,
I mean, there's
anything I can wired as long as it's feasible to have it wired for reliability reasons.
And it is latency, but what you have to remember, the wireless one would increase the latency by which you would resolve that first address, but subsequent ones would, are effectively cached locally on the client machines. So there's not as much communication as you might imagine, although you saw the numbers. There's quite a lot, that's going on there.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, compared to the volume of traffic you're passing over, HTTP, otherwise, HTTP is it's relatively inconsequential. But that initial latency, if you did want to reduce that, being on Wi-Fi would reduce its performance probably by a factor of 5 or 10 latency-wise. But again, that's just that one time you're hitting it. So.
Yeah. So I would say it's definitely recommended to have a wired connection there. All right, let's see if that makes it a little bit easier to read this typing. Tried making the font a little bit bigger here. Yeah, that looks much better. All right, so what I have here is actually a blank Raspberry Pi 2 because it's more than powerful enough. It's just that kit happens to be better to a better price to get the Raspberry Pi 3, and it's actually a much better system, so highly recommend that one. But I just installed the base Raspbian here, and I'll paste the link for that here. Roverdesk, I have heard of that K9 web protection, and I kind of lean towards what Nick was saying. I really don't trust programs to do that stuff. So software is probably the easiest thing on a person's computer to get around, especially if they're semi-technical people. There's almost always a way to get around those software protections. That's why the firewall rules would probably be your best bet, and not even a firewall rule on the system. I would say do it at an internet gateway. So have one system that all your computers go through and manage it through there would be your best bet. But I have heard of that K9 web protection before. It's just it was more of a filtering program when I was looking at it. So
It was for
it does
kids.
everything. Yeah, it's like a net nanny.
Yeah.
If you remember that thing. But anyway, so we got a Raspberry Pi 2 here, blank setup. All I did was made sure it had the latest updates after using that Raspbian link that I have there. And to get the Pi hole set up, it is fairly easy. If you go to the Pi hole site here, the pretty much first thing you read on their page is the installation command. So we're just going to type that install command in here. And pipe it into bash. And we'll hit enter and it'll run away here. So now we got our Raspberry Pi set up, and it's starting the Pi hole here. And
by the way, we could have made those borders look a little bit better if we had selected a translation differently, but at any rate.
Do you know which translation it's supposed to be?
Yes, I do. I do.
Which one?
It's supposed to be the Western ISO one.
This is ISO Latin West European.
Okay, well, just keep going. It's not going to make that much of a difference, but you can get those borders around that window to look a little bit better, folks. But it's not.
But you're not going to see it anymore anyway. So we'll go ahead and say OK to this. There we go. It's actually UTF-8. It'll tell you it's free but powered by your donations. Highly recommend you donate to them because they are a team that does everything in their off time, and they basically use the donations as incentives to make this even better. So highly recommend checking that out and donating to them. Pi-hole is a server, so it needs to have a static IP address to function properly. And the next section, it will let us choose our current network settings. I only have it plugged into the Ethernet right now, so we're just going to go ahead and accept that one. Now, what you want to do here is you do want to check both of these options. So it's asking us which protocols we want to do blocking ads over. IPv4 and IPv6 are our options. I would recommend doing both of them.
Yeah, I see no reason not to do both. I mean, there's relatively little IPv6 traffic unless you're connected to an IPv6 internet.
Well, no, the key factor there is that if you are on an IPv4 only network, there are websites out there that resolve by IPv6, and those are not going to get blocked if you only have it to block IPv4. So if the website's already converted to IPv6 and that's what DNS is resolving to is the IPv6 address, those sites are still going to be allowed. I found that out when I was trying to block Baidu.com, actually. It blocked all of the IPv4 ones, which is a DNS record, but I kept getting quadruple A, so AAA DNS records for Badoo.com. And come to find out, IPv6 is what a quadruple A is, and it was resolving the IPv6 address. So I had to go back and set mine up to block IPv6 as well, because I only chose IPv4 because I thought I had IPv6 stuff blocked at my gateway, but apparently websites you can still resolve. So, so you do want to select both of those and say okay there. It's going to ask if we want to use our current IP address as our static address. In this case, we're just going to say yes. If you don't, you can change it and get an option to set it, but we're just going to say yes to that. And it tells us that it's possible our router could still try to assign this IP address to a device, which could cause a conflict, but in most cases, the router is smart enough not to do that, which is correct. But that's something else I'd like to mention is I wasn't worried about showing off that IP address there, because if something comes up in a certain range, I'm going to know it was automatically assigned, and I'm going to look more into it almost instantly. Because I go through and statically assign all of my MAC addresses with a DHCP static address. So my DHCP server sees this MAC address requesting IP address, and it just hands it a specific IP address. That way I can also categorize my things into certain subsections. So like maybe 50 to 80 would be my phones, and maybe 200 to 220 would be my computer desktops and things like that. So I know if I see an IP address coming up, which the Pi-hole shows you IP addresses, I can tell you what kind of device it is just by seeing what range that DHCP address is given. Also very nice to have your DHCP addresses static, because no matter what you do to your computer or network, next time it gets online, tries to get an IP address, it's going to get that same IP address. So highly do recommend setting up static DHCP addresses for your MAC addresses, and makes it a lot easier, and you won't have to worry about this issue that they're talking about with IP conflicts. But we'll go ahead and say okay there, and it's telling us it's going to do this address for IPv6, and doesn't really matter because it's only looking for DNS requests at IPv6 level. And now we get an option to choose between the DNS it forwards to after that. So again, what it's doing is your computer sends out a hey, where's google.com. The Pi-hole looks at that request and says, okay, google.com's not on my block list, so I'm going to go ahead and forward that to another DNS server and get the actual IP address. And in this case, you could choose Google's, which very fast, very reliable, around the world options. OpenDNS has some nicer features. They do a lot of the malware blocking DNS stuff and give you a lot of customization options for your group level and things like that. And Rover, this is where I was going to say that the Pi-hole could do what you need, because it'll be able to block web addresses and then forward everything to an open DNS if you have the open DNS set up to do it like that. Level 3, Norton, Komodo, or you can do a custom one. I normally just go with Google because it's probably the most fastest and reliable DNS servers that are out there, honestly. But any of these other options are pretty good. OpenDNS is probably my second favorite. I've heard good things about Norton's DNS servers. Have y'all as well, or unsure?
I don't know anything about theirs. I don't like anything Norton, frankly, but
I don't either, but it's only because their software is resource hog. As far as DNSing, it's probably actually decent.
Yeah, I'd have probably little to question. The only, but if they're using their filter in their software effectively to compile that list, I don't necessarily, with its rate of false positives and other things, I'm not so sure I want it. But You know what? That's just off the cuff analysis. I think it's probably perfectly fine. I'm just quite more familiar with Level 3, quite more familiar with OpenDNS, more familiar with Google. Norton Komodo, I would do all those other three first before I would start going to that fourth and fifth option there.
And I do agree. Like I said, I use Google for mine. So we'll go ahead and say okay for Google.
Mostly for performance, okay? I go for performance, and Google's are, you can test them. They're pretty darn fast. You can test the other ones too, and they're not slow by any means, but I think Norton and Komodo have a little bit more penalty there. Just check it out. Depends on where you are too. If you're right next door to one of those servers, it could be incredibly fast, of course.
Yeah, and also, was it, who was it that made that DNS benchmark tool?
Steve Gibson, didn't he?
Steve Gibson, yeah. Steve Gibson has a very nice DNS benchmark tool, and Nick actually turned me on and us on to this. I'll go ahead and post that in there. That's actually really nice to find out what the fastest DNS servers are around you, and more often than not, it's going to be your ISP. I think almost always my ISP rates in the top 3 to 5.
Yeah. They're very close physically.
Close, so
yeah, they're very close physically, so that's almost to be expected. But like I said, yeah, the fact that Google comes in so close, and the fact that I don't trust my ISP's DNS servers.
Well, the ISP ones can do their own ad block or ad injection stuff with false.
Exactly. That's why I don't like it.
Things like that. So I tend to steer away from them, but also the other side of it is I've seen where the ISP DNS servers go down, especially when they had that 32 kilobyte router issue going on a couple of years ago, where like all the routers in the world realized that they reached a memory overflow.
Well, all right, I don't want to get into the details, but they've had some issues, and I, like Brantley, noticed when they immediately started to use DNS servers to redirect your failed DNS lookups and things like that when provide advertising. I don't like anyone. They still do this. They just do it a different method. I don't like anybody injecting content into my stream, but unfortunately, I don't think there's any way totally around that right now. But other than don't use the ISP, but yeah.
They do have a password generator as well, and Steve Gibson is pretty good person, so kind of knows his stuff.
Oops, sorry about that, guys. I hope still. Oh crap! I gotta bring the chat up. My bad. I think that should do it. Okay. We lost the chat window there for a quick second.
It looked okay still on ours, but so this Pi-hole is basically setting everything up for us here and doing everything in the background that it needs to do. So it is running away, and I believe after this we'll be able to, it'll have a couple more steps for us, which is what Michael was asking about at the very beginning of this.
But I think you'll notice it's just a few steps. This is one of the most straightforward, quickest projects I've ever done with a Pi, basically.
Yep. So this is where you have to do a little bit of manual steps for yourself here. This point you would want to go through, and wherever your DHCP servers are, or if you want to do it on each individual computer, I would recommend doing it at the DHCP level, because that way it makes it a little bit more difficult for people to get around or even know about. I actually do mine at the internet gateway, and like I said, I have certain devices that I don't want to go through the Pi-hole, and certain devices I do. So this makes it easier if I set it up through my internet gateway here. But basically, whatever you have, if it's a router, internet gateway, or just the computers themselves, you'd want to go into their DNS settings and set this address as the one and only DNS server. That way, you know it's always going through here and always doing its lookups through here, and will always be blocking any ads. I say going through the DHCP in your router or internet gateway is much nicer because you don't have to go through and set each device to use this DNS server. It's only going to use what's handed to it and makes it a lot easier. So basically at that though, we say okay, does a little bit more cleanup here, and we're pretty much set up. So now we should be able to visit this address and see our Pi hole set up here.
Have
So
you
this
ever
is,
have you ever gotten it to automatically resolve on the pi.hole?
I have never tried, so.
Go ahead and try that for me, but I never, I don't think I've ever gotten it to resolve, but I don't know.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know which one would be
No,
resolved quickly.
is
I
it?
have
It's not
to.
pi-hole. It's I think it's pi.hole, but I'm thinking maybe I typed it in pi-hole.
No, it is pi dot hole, you're right. But see, I don't, since I have two of them set up here, which one's going to get resolved?
I don't know the answer to that exactly, but oh, it sure does. Yeah, okay, that must be it. I was I must have just typed
And it
pi-hole.
resolves the one that is my main one.
Hmm. Is that
No,
okay,
it's
so
not.
that's not this one. Okay. Yeah.
So you can see we set it up on this .10 address, and it gave us this interface. And now this one I can scroll down because I don't have anything actually set to go out on it.
Those
But
graphs don't work until it resolves at least one thing, so I've noticed. I don't
yeah,
know if they've changed that recently, but
you can
if
see them here though.
yeah, if you don't see any activity and you think it's not working, make sure it's actually there's requests being sent to it. Make sure it's turned on in the wherever you're going to make the change in your network settings, and make sure traffic's actually routing it through there.
But this can also be how you can check and see if you have the systems you're expecting to be going through, because they should show up as clients here, and then you'll be able to see what domains are being requested by them and which ones are being blocked as ads. Then you'll get your same graphs that I showed on mine here. But the other nice thing too, and I've actually used this quite a bit to find out more about where my devices are going, is you can go into this query log and sort by client, and then you can actually review every domain DNS request that that client has gone through and asked for. So you know where that computer is going. Maybe this is actually a better route to take than trying to block someone from getting anywhere. Is you can just review this and say, hey, how come you were going to this site and this site and this site all day today? What's up with that? You're only supposed to be going to this site, and this site.
Yeah.
So why am I seeing you getting requests on all of these sites?
The whitelist and blacklist management, there's a lot of things. The graphs are just really the tip of the iceberg in here, but these other screens don't look nearly as fun, and so people will likely just kind of glaze over them and just look at those pretty graphs. But honestly, some of the cool stuff, particularly relating to the questions that were asked to us earlier, could potentially be done this way. And I just wanted to point out, I always love knowing the temperature of my Raspberry Pi, and it's so cool that the Pi hole takes that into consideration up there. That's so nice.
The whitelist is pretty nice. You do have to be specific about your whitelist so it doesn't do wildcarding there. So in certain situations, certain places require you to view their ads to see. So you may have to add a whitelist to be able to get to certain sites. So just keep that in mind. Blacklisting is fairly nice. It does not support wildcarding either. You'd have to block the entire domain or something like that to get it to stop. And then of course you can always donate easily to them.
Is there an on-the-fly way to get it to stop it from blocking something? Say you go to a site that that requires you to view ads. Is there a on-the-fly way to allow it?
There is not. You'd either have to change your DNS and clear your DNS cache, or you'd have to figure out what you need to whitelist and then go and whitelist it. Then it'll let you through. So no on-the-fly option like you would get in browser ad blocking type thing. So good point to bring up. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Because yeah, once this is on, if you have your computers going through it, there's no way to stop it other than not having your computers go through it. So, past that, their latest update to this nice interface here will actually tell you when there's an update available. It'll actually give you this nice little pop-up here whenever that happens. It'll just say there's an update available. And you can also just click here to go to the updates and see what the latest version is. You can look at the change log and see what the bug fixes are. This latest version 2.9 actually had quite a few nice features come with it. The biggest one is their update option. So previously, to update, you had to go through and just run that same command again. So you'd have to type in the curl. We'll go ahead and clear here. So you'd have to type in the curl this and then basically just run through the install again. Not that big a deal, wasn't that big a problem, went through fairly fine, easily. But now they've added it so that you can just update it, so you don't have to reconfigure anything. You just do pi-hole -up, I believe. Yep. So you just type in the command pi-hole -up, and it'll go through and look and see if everything is up to date and update things if it needs to be. It'll also go through and check your system, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. And that is pretty nice. It's just that one little command, pi-hole -up, and you're off and ready to go. And you can see that on that last page that I linked there. Yeah, and you can see we didn't have to go through any of the steps for the update. It just goes through and checks for any updates available and updates it, and you're good to go again. So very nice, very quick, very easy. We're going to go ahead and get out of that. And I think we're good on this side. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Michael, if you want to switch back over. Michael, can you hear us? Because you're muted.
Yeah, no, we're switched back over, but I was just noticing it was so weird that they both scenes looked almost looked pretty close on. It wouldn't have been bad either way if we just left it. It's a little bit bigger, but yeah.
So while I was doing the research for this past weekend, I was looking around their site and looking for interesting, strange things. And I noticed this blog post that they did about accessing your Pi-hole remotely. They kind of go through some things here, and one of the biggest things you pick up from this is it's really not recommended. If you want to access it remotely, your best option is to use a VPN to connect to your local network. That is going to give you the secure encrypted tunnel. So if you are out at a public Wi-Fi and you VPN to your home, then you can use the Pi-hole and be fine with that. They have a link there to set up the VPN and what you would need to do. Let's see what that link is. I didn't actually look at that one.
I mean, but you know, any existing method of remote connectivity to your network will effectively allow you to look at that web page and check the status of your Pi-hole, right?
Yeah, but they're talking about actually using it as your DNS server while you're out and about.
Yeah. That's
So without a VPN, your other option is set up port forwarding, and that is what they highly recommend against. Basically, what you end up with there is a public DNS server, and you do not want to deal with that. Essentially, there's so many things that could go bad, and you'd be set up for so many attacks that it's really just not worth it to have a public DNS server. So doing a VPN, and you can even have it so your VPN forwards DNS servers and overrides whatever your current DNS server is, so it forces it to go through the Pi hole there, which I can say would be nice if I'm out and about on my mobile network and could have my ads blocked still on my phone. I'd be much happier, but I don't have it set up for that, and VPNing on a phone is a little bit more difficult than meets the eye. So anyway, that's pretty much it. That's the only real interesting link I found on their page. Otherwise, they just talk about some other stuff that I didn't really find that interesting. But yeah, that's Pi hole. Pretty easy setup. Like I said, you don't even really need a Pi. You could set that up on any Linux computer. Just type that command in, set it up like we did here, and then set all your computers to use that as its only DNS server, and you're good to go. Could even be done from a virtual machine on your main computer or your server if you have one of those. So really doesn't need that much processing or RAM power. I was using a Raspberry Pi 2 there, so I think that's 900 megahertz and a 512 RAM, and it doesn't even use up that whole 512 RAM. So you could actually use that Pi for something else if you did use a Pi, or if you have a virtual machine. That's how little RAM it would take to get that set up and going. So all right, that's it. Do we have anything else we wanted to talk about here? Michael, do you want to talk about why I don't like OP-NSense now?
You can talk about that. I'm not sure what experience you went through over the weekend, but please.
So I was like, because we were talking about, I think on Friday, where we were saying internet gateways were pretty much set up to be like secure by default when you first set them up, right?
A little bit more so, but I mean, there's going to be things that you'll just have to do. But anyway.
Well, I went through and I was like, well, I want to see if there's a way to harden this OP-NSense and make sure everything is secure and things like that, right? So I type in OP-NSense harden, and apparently there's a FreeBSD hardened or OpenBSD, whichever one they're using, hardened version, and they had teamed up with them to make a version of BSD for OP-NSense. And I was like, okay, well, why am I not running on the hardened one? Because all their stuff on the OP-NSense just says FreeBSD or OpenBSD, whichever one. It doesn't say the hardened thing there. So I was like, what happened to that? And that article was from 2015. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I wonder why they aren't touting that as being the version they're using. So I did some more research on it and was looking around and basically came across all of these sayings and sites that were just like, they're a joke. They're basically just upset that pfSense wasn't going the route that they were taking, and basically all they did was make a nicer user web interface, and everything else is just the same, if not broken, comparatively to pfSense. So, and I was kind of feeling that way before as well. I was like, if they forked pfSense, then why wouldn't I still stay with pfSense, because it has such the strong community backing? Like, definitely not the strong community backing they get with OP-NSense. You're muted as well.
Isn't this the same thing we see with the issues with the open versus library communities?
Maybe, but I kind of see it as like they split, and there's still a huge development team behind pfSense, and they're coming out with updates.
Well, I mean, I don't see OP-NSense has come out with a tremendous number of updates since I've started using it.
Yeah, but they still aren't even close to where pfSense is.
Yeah, they just started.
Yeah, available. No, they've been out for like 2 years now.
Oh, PFSense has been out longer though.
Yeah, they've been out since 2004. So again, if you're going to trust someone, wouldn't you trust the people that have been doing it longer and better? And that was some of the other
I
points.
don't know, but if you can't get up off the ground to implement PFSense because of its user interface, then
That's
they're
the other
really.
thing too, is when I reloaded PFSense this morning, they have updated the interface and made it much nicer.
So the competition is helping regardless. Okay, great.
From what I understood, they were already looking at updating the interface, so it does like they didn't make it. It's essentially the same interface. It's just nicer looking. And I guess having done the OPN sense, where I kind of have a concept of what's going on, it made all of the PF sense a lot easier to get set up and working as well. So I don't know. I say that I'm going to stick with the PF sense because it has a stronger community backing and they know a lot more about what they're doing. So there's a lot less chance of things going wrong or being awry. So yeah, I'm back on PFSense, and that's my gateway. And yeah, not a problem, Rover. Glad you liked it. And let us know if you set one up and if you like it as well, or if it would do what you were looking to do. Like I said, that's kind of a strange thing to, like, I guess I had a previous boss before that was like, I want to block everyone from getting to everything. And I was like, well, why are you giving them internet access? She's like, well, they need internet access. And I was like, well, then you can't block them from getting to everything. What do you really want to accomplish here? And they were like, and the boss was like, well, I basically want to know that they're working and not just playing around on the internet. And I was like, well, we can do that with reporting. And wouldn't you want to know the people that are doing that stuff, not just block them from doing that stuff? Because then you know what kind of workers you have working for you. Like with reporting, you know, oh, these good workers are doing the work they're supposed to, and these bad workers are not doing the work they're supposed to. And you can easily see that and bring that to them even and say, look, we've seen you're going to all of these places. Why? You're supposed to be working right now. And I feel like that works out more in the long run for both the employee and the person. Yeah, and see, just blocking all but 2 or 3 sites, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you give someone internet access for that? If you only want them to go to 2 or 3 sites, or they only have a reason to go to 2 or 3 sites with your internet access, then reporting would be the better way to see, because you can easily see if they're going to more than those 2 or 3 sites. And you can easily come down on them for going to those more than 2 or 3 sites. Proctor, business owner, do you have any opinions on this? I know Michael is grieving and sighing over there about it, but
Smaller businesses aren't going to want to deal with the reports. They'd probably just rather it be blocked.
I'm saying, like, providing internet access, it's almost impossible as to impractical to block everything.
Yes, yes.
Except for 1 or 2 sites. And if your employees are only needing access to 1 or 2 sites, and that's why you're providing them internet access, it's pretty easy to look at a quick report. Like that interface right there would tell you if you had more than 2 domains showing up in those domain lists, they're not going to just those 1 or 2 sites. And you can track it back to which ones are not doing that.
Yeah, I would think you're always going to run into a case where they need to go to another site legitimately, and it's blocked, and then it's a pain in the butt to get it unblocked and get them to what they need.
Because I mean, that's the biggest problem with just implementing a filter to try to prevent porn or things like that, is things get misclassified. Like Michael was saying, false positives with Norton. If you end up in a filter there and it's blocking something, you probably spend 10, 15 minutes figuring out why you can't get to that site when you expect to be able to. and then you spend another 5-10 minutes fixing the issues so that you can get to that site. So there's like half an hour just wasted on something that's supposed to be helping you improve your work
Productivity,
efficiency.
right?
So,
Yeah, I agree with you on the reporting note. I'd rather know what my employees are doing as opposed to just blocking them. Because say if you got an employee that's just on Facebook all day, if you block it on the computer, they're just going to do it on their phone.
yeah, and that's
and then you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing is that they have other devices. You're going to have to take that into account, that people are BYODing all the time now. We have a friend that comes in our chat, Net Hunter. His office, he works in the medical industry, and they do lock down a lot of their sites and blocks and have filters and things like that put up so he can't get out to things. He just brings his phone and his laptop and tethers, and he can do whatever he wants all day. So then you don't know what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then you're like, oh, we got to stop people from bringing in their devices too. So now we got to have them going through metal detectors and X-ray machines, and it's a bad spiral. If you don't trust the people that are working for you, you got more problems going off, I feel. But hey, Glenn, welcome, Glenn. Came in here. Yeah, and Glenn pointed out the other devices as well. So yeah, that's those. And we have managed to reach our hour time limit. I didn't think we were going to reach it on Pi-hole since it's such an easy, fast setup. But had some good talk with Rover Desk about that issue there, and maybe this will help for it. Like I said, it kind of gives you a nice, easy interface to track those kind of things, so you can kind of see more about what's going on and take it from there. So. Oh yeah, she's guys is it's like in Spanish they use the male term for everyone, so it's okay. Anyone have anything else you want to talk about today, or go real quick or throw out there? No, good. All right, well, let's wrap her up for today. Sorry we're leaving out just as you join here, Glenn. But thanks, Rover and Glenn, for being in our chat and participating today. Always much appreciated and welcomed. Hope you enjoyed the content on this focus day. And otherwise, I hope you have a good start to your week. Glenn, you're already into yours a day, so hope it's going well for you. And we will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. And again, we're here to provide support and answer any questions about our products and services primarily. But otherwise, you can get to us anytime, and we'll be more than happy to help there as well. Take us on out, Michael.
All right, goodbye, internets. We'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Bye, Internet.